Hey everyone, this is Ryder from Skip. I hope you're doing well. It's Monday, July 6th, and I have a very important video here on the Paycheck Protection Program. News that came out today, finally. The data of who received PPP loans was finally released to the public. This is huge. As you may know, if you've been following the saga, people have been asking for this data to be released for the last couple months. And finally, in a video I did last week, SBA agreed to release it, and today they released it. So basically, this is important because it shows every business that took over $150,000 in PPP loan, the business name and information, and who got the loans and who didn't get the loans. It doesn't really say who didn't get the loans, but we can draw conclusions based on industry. More importantly, we can look at the big guys that didn't need the loans that took these loans. And these are essentially grants because, again, most of these are going to be forgiven. If you recall, the SBA has relaxed restrictions around how to get forgiveness. I'll link to that video as well in the description. But what it means is that even these big guys that got loans and probably they didn't need it are going to get this money essentially for free. So I'm going to briefly talk about that. But this is a huge deal, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be reports after reports after reports about who took the money that shouldn't have. And the New York Times has been doing a great job. I'm just going to show you a few quick headlines from the Times. Then I'm going to show you the data, how to get the data yourself, and some of our takeaways too, based on our analysis. So first of all, this elite law firm that has defended people like Harvey Weinstein got $10 million under the PPP program. Again, here's the main takeaway here. This program was designed to help struggling small businesses, okay? And what this data shows today is that there are so many big names that took the money, and they absolutely did not need it because these partners at this law firm, Bo Schiller Flexner, commonly earn seven figures, right? Most of us are struggling to pay rent to stay in business, but guys like these got approved to take a $10 million loan. Similarly, small government advocates and lobbyists also got a lot of funds. And there's piece after piece about as people go through the thousands and thousands of records who took the loan, and it's very surprising. Even some of Trump's businesses got some of the loans. There's really a lot coming out, and we expect to see a lot more published. Now, I just want to say briefly on behalf of the SBA that number one, they didn't control who got the loans. The actual lenders got the loan. So that's a very important distinction, that the SBA set the framework, but they did not say yay or nay to each loan. The individual lenders and banks did. Number two, just because businesses are on this list, it doesn't mean that they complied with all the rules, right? And so even 2 months ago, Steve Mnuchin said that every business that took over $2 million will be subject to due diligence and further investigation before forgiveness is made. Okay, so those are a few of the points that the SBA put out to basically say, look, what's gonna be discovered here is that big guys who didn't need the money took it, right? And many gave back money in the last few months, but many kept the money. And so there's going to be pressure and public scrutiny on why they took the money. So here's where you can find the data. I'll link to this in the description, but basically you can download one big CSV for all loans over $150,000, right? So the loans over $150,000 account for about 3/4 of all loan value distributed, but only about 15% of the businesses that received the loans. So if you want to go deeper and see the loans by state under 150,000. And again, these businesses aren't named. It's just aggregate data at the zip code level. You can click on the state and see that data. So there's a lot of data here. If it's worth diving into, especially if you've been interested in how PPP loans are getting distributed. This is all our tax money, so it's important. And here's kind of one of the headlines from the Times today. Lobbyists, law firms, and trade groups took a lot of the small business loans. I'm not going to get into all the details, but suffice to say that a lot of companies took it that probably didn't need it. So, such as a fancy sushi restaurant at the Trump International Hotel, Kanye West company Yeezy, and President Trump's longtime personal lawyer. Okay, these are just a few. You can kind of pick and choose who you want to call out here. And we took a quick look here. This is a very large CSV file. So this is a CSV for the over 150,000. And if I just move over here a little bit, you can see the loan amounts on the left hand side here. It's over 100 megabytes. So it won't probably open up in Google Sheets or just any kind of default CSV program because it's so big. So keep that in mind. But you can see that you can basically scroll through and see the types of businesses. And it's interesting, even companies that can't even spell company got up to $1 million loan. The Australian Tanning Company LLC, right? So, probably a lot of mistakes, but I think it's worth putting the scrutiny on these companies now because, again, this is $500 billion. If I go back to the PPP results, here's where we're at, okay? There's been almost $5 million, 5 million businesses that have received loans, and the net is $521 billion. And when we look at the distribution here, we see that almost 5,000 businesses received over $5 million in loans, and that's about 6% of the total. Okay, and if you take a look at who received over $2 million, all businesses that received over $2 million, that's around 30,000 businesses, and that makes up around 20% of all the money that's out there. Now, obviously, I've reported on this last week. There's still money left in the PPP fund, by the way, and the good news is that the Senate approved an extension. I believe it still has to be signed by the president, but if you haven't received a PPP loan, at the bottom here, we'll see that here's the funding that's left, $131 billion. So this video is less about the lack of funding because there's money in the pot. So if you're a first-time applicant, there's money available for you. It's more about two things. Number one, big businesses took this funding that didn't necessarily need it. I mean, we don't exactly know, but we can make assumptions around these huge companies that pay their executives 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures. They took funding, and the question is, they probably didn't need it. And the second piece is the bigger question: how do we help the small businesses that still need help? So we did a piece on the helloskip.com blog today, so you can go to helloskip.com/blog. I'll leave a link to this because this piece also has a link to the data that you can download. Okay. And we go over what PPP information was released by the SBA, talk about the sheet that I just showed you, the point that I already made: large companies received PPP funding, even though that wasn't the intent. Certain sectors and states received a large amount of funding. Okay, and this is based on New York Times analysis. Restaurants, medical offices, and car dealerships were the top recipients of large loans. For example, physicians' offices received loans worth as much as $19 billion, and total loans were as much as $17 billion for car dealers, $13 billion for law offices, and $5 billion for dentists. We do know that medical offices have been severely impacted by COVID because people just aren't going to those appointments. And they do a geographic breakdown too. About 13% of all funding went to California. So, You can look at that, but I think the big piece that we're following and wondering is, okay, what's next? Small businesses, even if you took 50K, 100K, it's not enough. And the good news is, there are a couple pieces of good news. That, there was talk last week that the $130 billion left may be reallocated to the hardest hit businesses. Steve Mnuchin's talking about this. We're following it. Now, that's number one. Number two, this is for the IDL program, which is a separate program. But a congressman last week proposed that the interest rates for that program be changed to 1% instead of the 3.75%. So in our survey, we found that many businesses took both the PPP and EIDL. So that's also relevant. And as many of you know, we have support COVIDrecovery.com initiative, which helps thousands of small businesses, and it's been a huge success so far. It's a free listing, so any business can list. And what they'll do, I'm just going to click randomly here on Detroit. Businesses can get supporters, put in their mission statement, and most importantly, put down what they're doing to ensure safety. Like this example, we're fully open, visit us in person, masks are required, social distancing measures in place. And you can like this business, and you can also follow their socials, and you can share on Facebook. And what we're adding is ways to donate to these businesses. But bottom line, these small businesses, and these are all small businesses, want to feel like they have your support and that you have pledged to support them, to support the little guys, the local businesses that provide millions of jobs. So that's important. So that's at supportcovidrecovery.com, and we have over 40 regions. You can find your region, you can share it with businesses that you know, or list your business. So I know this has been a lot, but it's breaking news today, so I wanted to cover it, and I'm going to link to the SBA.app.box. It's on box.com. All of the data that the SBA dumped today and the things to keep in mind, which I already mentioned. That, again, before you attack the SBA, you do need to realize that they delegated this to banks and lenders, so they didn't actually approve of the loans. But I think we are going to see more pieces about this and more pressure for these big companies to return the funds or do something to make up for taking money that they didn't necessarily need. Thanks again for all your support. Thanks for watching and subscribing. As always, subscribing means so much to us. It allows us to do videos like this, to spend hours like today researching, going through the data, and figuring this out. We've even written letters to the SBA, both for the PPP and EIDL programs, to share some of our findings. So it's always a big help. As always, stay safe and stay well. Take care.